Welcome friends to another Dune video. Today we're going to look at Thufir Hawat, Master of Assassins for the Atreides. We're going to look at his work during the first Dune novel and flesh it out a little bit with extra information from the Dune Encyclopaedia to see the good and the bad that he does for the family and the decisions that he makes in his position. Spoilers for Dune and the Dune Encyclopaedia throughout. Let's get straight into it. As you may know, the Harkonnens left Dune and were replaced in that thief by House Atreides, but of course the Harkonnens, being the ruthless family they are, wanted to make things as hard as possible for House Atreides. Even when they are no longer there, Thufir has to secure the capital of Dune for the family. It's called Arrakis. Hawat became, as the book says, an authority on Arrakis. He gathered and digested every scrap of knowledge available on geography, topography, climate, weather and history, as well as on the Fremen and their culture. Then observers were sent out to add to this information, as what is written in a book can be more complex in a real-life situation. Hawat sets up Leto's communications network and enlarged the codes they used, especially the Atreides hand signs and battle language, his creations. He sent out troops, dividing them between the governor's mansion and the landing field, and he assembled soldiers on those suspected to sympathise with the Harkonnens. Perhaps they benefited under their leadership or remained on their payroll. Then he spent days and nights without rest, checking every single room and furnishing of what would be the Atreides' residency. The Dune Encyclopaedia says he set up shields, placed safety devices, cleared the servants, and personally installed the poison snoopers. But even a mentat and a master of assassins cannot predict everything, and a hunter-seeker guided by a Harkonnen operative nearly takes the young Atreides' life. Thufir wants to resign, but Leto saw the readiness that Thufir had been able to instill in his son. He can perhaps be given some credit for Paul's survival at all, so Leto turns him down. With his position as Master of Assassins, Thufir knew well sabotage and how to counter it, and Thufir found many Harkonnen intrigues, and he used the tools he needed to fight them. The Dune Encyclopaedia says he did not hesitate to use bribes, deceit, or even murder if service to his duke called for them. One of the biggest benefits to the Atreides from Hawat was his assessment of the Fremen. Perhaps without his advice, Leto might not have seen he could harness their desert power. Hawat sees that the estimates of the Fremen and Arrakis were strangely low. When he knew more about them, he knew they were fighters with great potential, perhaps as deadly as the Emperor's Sardaukar. His first analysis told Leto and Paul what the terms Mahdi and Lisan al-Gaib, core parts of the Fremen faith, meant. He also saw concerns the Fremen had of preoccupation with water reclamation, their reticence with strangers, their passion for freedom, and their obsession with exclusivism. By the way, just to add something, Lisan al-Gaib is the prophet from the outer world. Through this understanding, he advised Leto to be cautious when taking control of the desert botanical testing stations, so not to antagonize the Fremen because of the importance of the stations to them. He also saw the fingers of the Guild on Arrakis. They had refused the Atreides the ability to put up a weather satellite. We know the Guild did not want the Atreides to see the real value of Arrakis in their secret spice deal with the Fremen, whose activities they keep hidden in return. One chink in Thufir's armour was when the Harkonnen mentat de Vries gave false information to him, a letter implicating Jessica and not the Atreides' Suk Doctor who had actually betrayed them, and the mentat believed it. He also could not predict the size of the attack on the Atreides to take back Arrakis from them. The forces against the house he cared for were of more than 100 brigades. To give a value to it, the Dune Encyclopaedia tells us the entire spice income of Arrakis for 50 years could not have covered the cost of such a venture, but the Emperor's pockets could. Thufir, at this point, is taken alive by the Baron, with the drive for Thufir to get revenge by allowing Hawat to believe Jessica was alive and never revealing that Dr. Wellington Yueh was the true betrayer. The Baron could feed Hawat's desire for revenge. The Baron would direct him through information. In other words, as a precaution, Hawat's body was given a poison created by the Baron's dead mentat, and it was put in all his meals. Hawat would die within days without the antidote. Hawat still worked against them though, his heart with the Atreides. His plan was to create a rift between the Baron and the Fade Routher Harkonnen, his nephew. He was to use an undrugged warrior in a battle against Fade in a Harkonnen gladiator ring. He knew the plan would not work, as Fade gave himself such an unfair advantage, both a poison-tipped dagger and a trigger word planted in the gladiator. But Thufir sent a non-drugged Atreides soldier. Though he might lose, he also stood a chance of hurting Fade. They fought well, but Fade won, and because it looked like he had been put in danger, the Baron's gladiator trainer was blamed for it and killed, and that left an opening for one of Fade's men. So Thufir rolled the dice and projected that things could go either way. Think Fade dies, the Baron has no heir and has to continue to rely on the Beast Raban, much less reliable than Fade, or Thufir helps Fade move towards taking out the Baron, a longer-term plot. Next, Thufir knew that the Baron liked boys and worked with Fade to find such an attraction. Using Fade's man inside the Baron's household, the boy was given a poison needle hidden in his thigh. The plot failed and the Baron lived, but the Baron let Fade live as well, as he had no heir of his own. In Thufir's move here, maybe the Baron dies and Fade moves into his position, with the mentat trying to help, or instead, the Baron kills Fade for the betrayal, and once again was left with Raban as his heir. Whilst plotting with the Baron, Thufir needed to prove his skills, so Vladimir would keep him around. The Dune Encyclopaedia explains on this point. He complied with the Baron's orders, joined his conspiracies, designed his plots, no matter how nefarious, all to one dedicated end, the glorious day he could strike the annihilating blow against those who had crushed his cherished house. The Baron always underestimated the Fremen in size and strength, and so Thufir convinced him to restrict aid to the Beast Raban, who was in the seat of power on Arrakis. So Raban oppressed the Fremen even harsher and started the path for Fade to replace the Beast. Fade would be hailed as a saviour when he arrived to replace him. Thufir also revealed the size of the Fremen forces to the Baron, but held back other details. He had been in touch with Gurney Halleck secretly. It was said the Fremen were using Atreides tactics, and he heard they were led by a leader called Muad'Dib. So it became that a fleet was above Arrakis, with both Harkonnen troops and the Emperor's blades, the Sardaukar. The Baron sent Thufir to a smuggler's place, and he carried orders to infiltrate Muad'Dib's camp, and so Hawat was not there when Paul took Arrakeen, defeated the Emperor's troops, and captured the Emperor himself. When the mentat returned, a lot had changed, including that the Baron, his tormentor, was dead, and that Muad'Dib was a young Paul Atreides, and he also saw at this point the innocence of Jessica. Thufir was summoned by the Emperor and the Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Mahayam when they went before Paul. He was given a poisoned needle and told to use it on Paul. He was hurting at the time from the poison within him from the Baron, to which there was no antidote available. Hawat entered the hall, sees Gurney, and uses the Atreides hand signals and tells him, thinking Paul was dead, he had been working with the Harkonnens, and to request that he be left with the group, to avert, no doubt, any move that might be made against Paul. Paul knows the needle from his prescient abilities and greets Thufir as an old friend. Paul offers his life for all of Thufir's service. Hawat sees he has been working against Paul all this time and aiding the Harkonnens against him. So instead of taking the Duke's life, he takes his own, using the poisoned needle meant to be used on Paul. The Dune Encyclopaedia tells us the mentat, who had served 3 generations of Atreides, his final honour is, the order is given to have Hawat's body carried away and treated with all the respect of a hero of the tribe. Now friends, I turn this over to you. What do you think to Thufir's decisions, both good and bad, and how it affects the Atreides when they're alive and for a time afterwards when he thinks they are dead. Have you tinkered with a poison snooper and been caught by Thufir? Comment down below.